Welcome to the show. It is Tuesday. Glad to have you with us today. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is along here as well. No matter where you are, there is snow on the ground if you are in the upper Midwest anyway, in this part of the world. Dug myself out of some snow the other day. And how are you today, Jesse?
I'm doing relatively well. Tomorrow's already going to be Wednesday, so I'm halfway through the week. I've got Friday off. Um,
Funny.
Early morning.
I'm halfway through the week too as of tomorrow.
There we go.
Whether you're in Cleveland or in South Bend, the days all count the same. Who knew?
Yeah, I'm at
You're
work
getting
days.
ready for yet another round of Jesse is taking time off. I love how you complain about the fact that you don't have enough PTO time, yet you have time to just take these jaunts from time to time. Is it all
Well,
going to catch up to you at the end of the year when you need some PTO time?
it is. There's a method to the madness, is
Okay.
all I'll say.
Okay. All right. All right.
But it's
Time's great.
hard to turn down playing golf with friends.
Yeah. Even if maybe you have to dig out of some snow since you're going to Myrtle Beach.
I think it'll all be melted.
All right. You're hoping it'll all be melted. We'll see how
I'm
that goes.
hoping.
We've got a lot of Notre Dame football to talk about in the show today. We're going to do a little final stock up, stock down, Shamrock up, Shamrock down for Notre Dame football for the 2025 season. The end of season, this kind of got pushed off because of all the, events that have happened, well, the coaching changes and everything else over the last month or so. So this got pushed back. Wanted to start, we don't talk a lot of NBA on this show, but because as it says in the open to the show, the number one topic is Notre Dame football, 365 days a year. We had some people push back yesterday because we talked too much Notre Dame women's basketball, even though it was very relevant Notre Dame women's basketball that we talked about. Tournament chances, Hannah Hidalgo, player of the year, that kind of thing. But Jaden Ivey, son, of course, of Niele Ivey, as well as former Notre Dame football player Javen Hunter, traded today from the Detroit Pistons to the Chicago Bulls. And Jaden, of course, grew up here in South Bend, went to Mishawaka Marian High School. You follow the NBA much more closely than me. I follow it just casually, and this year, I'll admit, I've followed it even less casually because of the fact that TNT no longer has the NBA. And, my favorite play-by-play announcer now is on Amazon, and I just don't, like I'm calling games on Thursdays, and that's when they have the NBA on Amazon is Thursday nights. But what do you like? Obviously, Jaden suffered a leg injury last year. He broke his fibula, missed a good chunk of the season with the Detroit Pistons last year, Jesse, and he's back this year. His minutes are down, his average is down from what I've heard. Like it looks like he's still kind of recovering from that broken leg that he had last year in terms of the overall burst and those kind of things. But there are also some good players that he was kind of behind in Detroit. Do you think that this is a good spot potentially for Jaden Ivey from a personal professional growth opportunity to go from the Detroit Pistons to the Chicago Bulls?
Yeah, I do think that this is a tremendous opportunity for Jaden Ivey. You have to remember he was drafted 5th overall back in the 2022 draft by the Detroit Pistons. In his first 2 seasons, he was averaging around 30 minutes a game and around 16 points a game. Last season, before the injury that you talked about, again, around 30 minutes and 17 to 18 points. And then you look at this year, and he's played 33 games, and he's only averaging around 17 minutes and 8 points. So, a lot of that is, getting back into the full swing of things because of injury. But, in that time, the Detroit Pistons, they have some really other good guards, and mainly Cade Cunningham, a guy who I think, has taken over that starting role as the starting point guard position. And that's unfortunate because the Pistons did draft Ivy 5th overall, as a guard and someone who they thought was going to be a franchise player. So, you combine his injury, the surgence of Cade Cunningham, Another good player, young player they have is Azor Thompson, another guy who, is probably taking minutes away from Jaden Ivey. And the Bulls now they traded away their center to Boston, and so they're running a lineup with no center, a lot of guards and forwards. And I think Jaden Ivey's going to fit very nicely into that system because they rotate a lot of guards and forwards throughout the game. I think his minutes will come back up, and it's funny because I've been looking. I look at a lot of NBA stats, and especially on a day-to-day basis, a lot of box scores, a lot of.
I wonder why. I wonder why you're studying those stats.
And so, a common theme, I was like, man, Jaden Ivey has really fallen off, a guy who's not getting as much minutes. And again, someone who used to give you between 15 and 20 points a game on a consistent basis. So I think this is a really good situation for him. And I think another aspect of this is, Chicago's really not far away from home, just like Detroit.
Getting ready to say, Mom is going to be pretty happy about this. It's a heck of a lot easier to get to Chicago than it is Detroit, to go see your son play basketball whenever you have the opportunity to do it.
Right. Someone in the chat asked where he went to college. He did go to Purdue. He was on those really good Purdue teams that made some deep runs into the tournament. And yeah, he was drafted again 5th overall out of Purdue. I think a lot of people wanted him to go to Notre Dame, but I think he wanted to kind of steer away from the Notre Dame thing. He wanted to do his own thing.
Yeah, his mom was obviously there for a long time. He grew up there, and he wanted to get out and kind of do his own thing. And he was able to go to a school that was still nearby and
better at basketball.
Yeah, and better at basketball, to be quite honest. But I believe he and Blake Wesley would have played together for at least a year if he had stayed here. So, think about what that could have been, for Mike Bray and Notre Dame men's basketball back in that run, because Blake obviously helped them get to the NCAA tournament. That was the year that they had to play in Dayton, and then they had to fly all the way to California, because they were playing in the first 4 and all that kind of stuff. But in any case, Jaden Ivey traded from the Detroit Pistons to the Chicago Bulls today, so hopefully that works out for him. Big news for again a local product from here in South Bend, Mishawaka, and the son of Niele Ivey as well.
As the NBA trade deadline approaches, which I believe is the 4th, I want to say tomorrow.
Well, I was going to say today's the 3rd, so
I think end of tomorrow.
All this stuff is kind of cooking right now. This is kind of
Yeah. What I was getting to is me personally, and I know there's not again a whole bunch of probably NBA fans in the chat right now, but one of the more better trade deadline sports, in my opinion, way better than football.
One of the more better. Okay.
One of the best trade deadline sports.
I feel like the NBA has one of the best trade deadlines.
Yes, there is always big time trades that are going on every year. There's already been 2 to 3 big time trades today. The Cavaliers, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I root for, they're going to get active. There's rumors about them trying to get Giannis or James Harden. So, I always enjoy
LeBron rumors going back to Cleveland. Hasn't that kind of popped up?
Yeah, his contract is up with the Lakers at the end of the season. Both sides no longer get along. So there's been talk about, maybe he gets traded. Maybe at the end of the season, he signs a contract with the Cavs to kind of finish off in Cleveland. So, there's a lot of rumors flying around Cleveland right now. So it's do they get some pieces at the deadline, knowing LeBron's coming next year? And so that's the best thing about Cleveland sports is there is always some crazy
It's not the Cleveland Browns. That's not the best thing about Cleveland sports. Are your buddies still trying to recover after they got Monken as their head coach?
Yeah, because they thought they were getting Harbaugh, and they thought they were getting this guy and that guy, and then it ended up being Monken.
Yep. They thought they were getting every prized guy out there on the market, and instead they got Monken.
Yep.
Oh, baseball's trade deadline used to be a lot of fun, but it's really, moving the trade deadline around and all that different. It's really fallen off in the last several years. But all right, so again, Jaden Ivey traded from Detroit to Chicago today. Jaden Ivey, a Bull, which obviously should make a lot of other local people happy who are Chicago Bulls fans in this area. When the Bulls are good, the fans come out. It's kind of like IU football, I guess. You hear about them when they're good. So
that was a good. I like that you snuck that in there.
Little side action there. Stock up, stock down. End of season, Notre Dame football 2025, kind of put a bow on 2025 as we ease into 2026 with spring football not that far around the corner. Now we're a month and a half away. We don't know officially exactly when spring football is going to start. I would imagine, it could start a little earlier this year because they pushed it off farther last year and abbreviated it because of the fact that they went all the way to the national
probably like 5-6
game.
weeks away.
Yeah. Could still come after spring break. It's just a matter of how many practices they go with, like do they condense? I wouldn't think that they'll condense it, because you missed out on bowl practice and now you probably try to, make up for some of that in the spring, and you've got all those early enrollee freshmen coming in as well. But we're going to start with which Notre Dame football players' stock rose the most during the season. We'll go offense, defense. Offensively, is there an answer besides CJ Carr for you?
I think CJ Carr is obviously, the number one answer. Talking about a guy who became a first-time starter, and, obviously his first season as well. And we'll get into this a little bit more into rapid fire, but a guy that goes from first-time starter in year one to now odds-on favorite to win the Heisman in year two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know by definition if you can say anyone's better than that in terms of stock-wise, right? I would have to go CJ Carr. Another person that I think, I think their stock rose. I don't think it rose to the level of CJ Carr's, obviously, but I think someone that I would like to put on the list or nominate maybe for an honorable mention would be the center, Ashton Craig.
Okay. Well, save that. I just wanted to do like the two, like from each side of the ball, the guys at the top of the list to kind of start off with. So we'll get into, some more of the, like your honorable mention list or, other top risers or however you want to put it. I mean, Justin is saying that CJ Carr ranked number 2 QB preseason by the IB staff. So by that, you mean Brian Driscoll. I don't know. Maybe Trevor had some input there. I'm wearing my IB hat. Nobody asked me to vote on it. But
I know you and Vince were Carr the whole time.
Yeah, for sure. I do wonder. Now, he, as you said, based on Vegas anyway, he and Arch Manning are the two front runners for the Heisman Trophy. I do wonder if nationally his stock, is up as much as it should be. It sure feels like a lot of people still think that Julian Sayin, like they would put Julian Sayin above CJ Carr, and we're probably quibbling by a couple of spots. This guy had the number 5 pass efficiency rating in the nation. Now, I know Sayin was a little bit in front of him, but for a first-time starting quarterback who didn't have the kind of receiving core, he still had a good receiving core, don't get me wrong. We all saw what Malachi Fields could do and some of the other guys that we'll talk about, in this honorable mention list. But as a first-time starting quarterback, over 2,700 yards, completed 66% of his passes, 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. That's 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And I know it's usually higher, obviously, in college than it is in the NFL, but that is still really good. 4-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio and the number 5 pass efficiency rating in the nation. So he came in with pretty good size stock, but you still have to go out and prove it. And I think he proved it week in and week out. He had just a couple of blips over the course of the season, like the Pittsburgh game with the pick 6 that he threw. And, like you can talk about the interception that he threw at the beginning of the season. We can talk about strategies and game plan and all that. But I think at the end of the day, no one's stock on the offense rose higher for me than CJ Carr.
Completely agree. And I don't think that there's really any other discussion to be had. Again, outside of maybe some guys who would be on an honorable mention list.
Well, so let's go ahead and stick with the offense then. You already mentioned Ashton Craig in terms of an honorable mention type guy. Who would be your other biggest risers on the offensive side of the ball? Like what I kind of thought about Ashton Craig, like I thought about each of the offensive linemen. And I guess he qualifies just because he had the injury that forced him to miss so much of last season. And there was the talk about Pat Coogan and what kind of loss he would be and all that kind of stuff. But I do feel like Ashton Craig, Pat Coogan was still good. And the guy went to Indiana and won a national championship. Good for him. Good for them. But I still feel like Ashton Craig, like if you just look at who's the better center, I still feel like it's Ashton Craig. Do you?
Yeah, and he was playing really good ball before the injury. And I think that you felt a little bit of those repercussions after the injury and having Notre Dame, to have to move some spots around. So, kind of going alongside him, I know this will probably make a lot of people mad, but I think Anthony Knapp's stock definitely rose. I think we all knew he was.
Some organizations think he's one of the top left tackles in the nation coming into 2026.
Right. And so I think that's something that has to be factored in this conversation. And I think most importantly, we saw a lot of growth in his pass blocking. We knew he was a really good run blocker. Were there still some faults in his game and some things he needs to get better at? Sure. But we're talking about a guy, again, that went from a true freshman to a true sophomore and is now going to be, he's going to be a 4-year guy. I think he's going to continue to develop. And if you say that he didn't get it better last season, then I just think you're being ignorant to the situation because of your disapproval with Joe Rudolph.
Right. It's the disapproval with Joe Rudolph, and there's the underwriting fact that so many people think, because of that Knapp is playing out of position and should be moved inside. Is there a case for that? Yeah, but honestly, I think it's time you move on from that already because they've shown you what's going to happen. So being upset and frustrated by that is going to do nothing.
You're just wasting your own.
Yes, it's misguided energy is all it is at this point.
I completely agree. I think the last person that is worth mentioning comes from because we've talked about Carr and in the offensive line. The skill positions. I think we got out of Eli Raridan what we finally expected. I think that obviously Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price did their thing. And I think the main group that you can focus on outside of that is the wide receivers. And I think there's we're going to talk further about maybe some guys whose stock went down, maybe flatline.
Well, go ahead.
But I think there is one wide receiver that really stood out to me this season that surprised me in terms of their production. And I thought that they were kind
of pure growth of stock.
Yeah.
Is it Will Pauling?
Yeah, it's Will Pauling.
That's exactly who I have as well. Like he was.
I think I figured he'd come in and be, like a reliable guy to get you a couple catches here and there, but he really turned into the reliable touchdown guy. Yeah. For a big stretch of the season.
He led the team in touchdown catches this season. Like he had 6.
And I think that's really, before the season, it was announced that he was going to be a captain. And it was like, really? The guy who just transferred here, only been here a couple months. And now you see why.
Yeah, exactly. I kept cutting you off there, so I apologize.
No, it's okay. It's a group discussion.
I think Will Pauling was at the top of my list of the offensive players because we really didn't know what to expect of him. And then, as you said, he gets voted a captain, which doesn't happen often, if at all, when it comes to transfer portal guys. And then the fact that he ends up being one of the top receivers, leads the team in touchdown catches this season. And so I think like outside of CJ Carr, he's the biggest riser. Like Price and Love are tough for me because it just felt like their stock was so high. There just wasn't enough room, because we're talking about whose stock rose the most, So like they basically
everyone knew who they were.
The expectations, and the expectations were huge.
Yeah. and they lived up to him, and
Right.
that's the hard part about being someone like Jeremiah Love is the guy had Heisman buzz going into the season, and it came down to the very last game, but he was fighting out to be, someone who could ultimately win the Heisman. I think you could say that Jadarian Price maybe exceeded his stock in that RB2 role and really helped out his draft position, because I think that did happen. I think there were questions about, would he be a day 3 guy, or would he maybe be someone who sneaks into the second round, or where exactly Jadarian Price goes. I believe that Price at least bumped his stock up to a level where he has proven that he can be a lead back in the NFL, or at least be within a rotation, because that's what the NFL is. Everyone's got 2 backs now. And I think he's someone who could still, who has worked his way into being potentially a round 2 running back.
USMA, going back to CJ Carr, says they both had CJ number 2. I assume they're talking about Brian and Trevor. I'm shocked they agreed on something. That never happens. It's all in love. It's all in love. Justin is saying Jordan Faison. I had a hard time with him, and I actually came up with a category, most underrated stock, and that's where I put Jordan Faison. Actually, I didn't know, like, in terms of, I'm doing the 6-7 thing again. I keep doing it. These are my scales as I bounce my hands up and down. It's not intended to be 6-7, but somebody told me yesterday I was doing the 6-7 thing when I was doing it. I put Faison on the most underrated because he ends up leading the team in everything but touchdown, well, in yards per catch as well. But in terms of 49 receptions, 640 yards. So his stock definitely rose, so he probably deserves to be there. But I still feel like it was fairly underrated for a guy who led the team in receiving, number of receptions and receiving yards. I still feel like he was fairly underrated because of the fact that you had Malachi Fields, and also because of the way Will Pauling, I think, really overperformed, probably based on expectations coming into this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you had Malachi Fields, you had Eli Raridan, Will Pauling, who really stepped up, and then you have obviously the running back tandem, and so I think it did take some of that spotlight off Faison, but I think Faison was underrated in the aspect of he was a guy who was getting you, like 50, 60 yards a game, and it felt like they were usually pretty crucial ones. Maybe a big third down or a big chunk play, where he's catching the ball on the outside and then kind of cutting through the middle of the field and getting you, those really nice kind of yards after catch type plays. And so, again, someone who didn't necessarily have the wow, touchdowns or plays, but I feel like he had a lot of those gritty kind of nice, get you into second and short, maybe get you out of a third and long situation. So I definitely think he's someone who falls in the underrated stock.
And I think they're going to lean on him more this next year as a result.
And I think there's no coincidence that he's kind of, moving on from lacrosse.
Right. Exactly. Okay, we haven't touched on any of the defensive guys yet. Before we get to the defense, real quick, I also had the category, what player do you want to say, like, what player do you think would be a riser, but his stock stayed more or less the same? Do you want to just do that as its own, regardless of offense or defense, and do the defense next, and then, just kind of do it that way? Or which way would you prefer?
We could just do it now since we're on the offensive side of the ball, and then move over and be completely on the defense.
So and we're going to have to take a break here pretty soon, but I've got 2 offensive guys on the what player did you think would be a riser, but his stock stayed more or less flat. Jaden Greathouse is at the top of the list. I'm not going to give him a stock down because it was injury related. And, for all the people who speculated all season long, oh, he's going to the transfer portal, this can't really be an injury. It was really an injury. And they were doing, some sort of out of the box treatments with the blood and all that stuff that Marcus Freeman talked about. So I'm not going to give him stock down because it was a legit injury, but we all obviously thought that Jaden, coming into the season, tons of expectation on Greathouse, but through no fault of his own, That's not the way it turned out. So I left him in the kind of flat stock category.
Yeah, I would put him in. I completely agree. I had him, and I had definitely one more, and a maybe on a third. So yeah, I would like to that my next definite of someone who's stock.
By the way, real quick before we move on, Tattoo says Tommy doesn't sound like that. This is what I think. This is what I think Tommy probably sounds like. This is kind of. We'll see if I got that right when he sees this show and he lets me know.
I was thinking about it the other day. I haven't seen Tommy as frequent in the chat. I don't know if it's a busy time of
Well, it's
year.
wrestling season. His son wrestles, plus he's a truck driver. So I think that he's kind of, he's
Hands are
stretched
tied.
all over the place. Yeah. But like Shay and Irving from the Dan Patrick show.
Yeah,
You ever heard him? Like I think Tommy is a little bit our version of Shay and Irving, probably.
I think we got to get him to call in at some point.
Maybe so. All right. Sorry, I cut you off. What's your who else is on your flatline stock list?
Next would be Aeneas Williams. I thought we would see more out of him this season. I know that maybe that's largely something out of his control based off the new running back coach and kind of his idea philosophy of how to get guys in there. Um, a guy who I thought was a really good third down back, a guy that you can use out of the backfield a lot, and get some matchups, with outside linebackers, kind of put some guys in some binds. I just thought we'd see a little bit more of him in terms of his development, knowing that Love and Price were going to be gone this season. And he made some big time plays, especially in the playoff last season. So
He's going to be the guy going into next year, though. So he's still got
yeah,
that going for him.
yeah, but I still think his stock more or less, flatlined for the season. We really
Yeah.
didn't see much Aeneas Williams.
No fault of his own. It's really the difference in how one running back coach uses the room versus how another running back coach uses the room.
Yeah, and I just don't know. Like, did Jeremiah Love really get that much better at the third down stuff? Or was that a point of emphasis for Sider, knowing that okay, Love is likely going to be going on to the NFL draft. How can we help to make sure that he's a complete back by the time that comes?
Yeah. I agree. I put Emil Wagner on this list for like flatline stock. I don't know if you had him in down. We haven't done any of the downs. Yeah, I had him here. It definitely didn't go up. It might have dropped a little bit. I mean, he did declare for the draft, so he is moving on, and I'm going to be really interested to see where he goes in the NFL draft. I don't think that his play was as consistent as it was a year ago. I think that there was a lot of room for growth still as a run blocking right tackle. So I left him at least in the flat area. Did you have him in the flat or down, or did you even have him anywhere?
I didn't really have him anywhere.
Okay.
I think him declaring to the NFL draft was a little premature, but I think we'll know the overall, like how the NFL draft goes. I think would kind of close the door on what we're talking about right now.
Correct. All right, so there's a lot of our offensive stock up, stock down. We're still going to talk about some guys on the defensive side of the ball, as well as some guys on the coaching staff as well. That is still to come with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. It's Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We're doing some final end of season Notre Dame football stock up, stock down. We did a weekly stock check during the season, and we're doing an end of season stock check now. We did the offense a minute ago. Let's get into some defensive players. I'm curious to see if we agree on which defensive players' stock rose the most this season. So who's your defensive guy, Jess?
This one's, I feel like, a little bit harder because, you go around the whole defense and, the secondary, not a lot of meat there. I think the least amount of meat is the linebacker room. I think we knew what the linebacker room was, kind of what the expectations were for the linebacker room, and largely those were kind of, matched a lot of the preseason narratives. And so for me, I think I have to go with Boubacar Traore as my top riser stock wise. I have someone else, very close second, but I guess I would like to hear your thoughts on Boubacar Traore.
I think Boubacar was in consideration for me. He was coming back from injury. What makes him a little bit tougher is just by nature of the position that he plays, they rotate those guys so much. So it's not that he gets, lost in the shuffle by any means, but I think it was a little like he didn't play the sheer amount of snaps in comparison to guys in the secondary.
No, but he still had a lot of good pressure numbers and respectable sack numbers at the end of the day.
Led the team, 6.5 sacks. And like you talked about, the tackles for loss and the pressure numbers and all that different kind of stuff.
Especially for a defense that struggled early on, first 3-4 games to really generate pressure.
That's very true because let's be honest, I don't even think there was much more expectation on Bryce Young, for example, going into the season. And I think we just kind of have to put it where it is when we're looking at the defensive side of the ball. Like the stock that Bryce Young has right now is lower than where it was going into last season. That doesn't mean that he's not still a very talented guy and all that kind of stuff, because he is. But in comparison, like what Boubacar, the way he produced compared to the way Bryce Young produced, big gap there. And so Boubacar, he would probably be my number 2 because, again, like we had honorable mentions and all that different kind of stuff. He came on my next list.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this one.
We do differentiate. I mean, to me, there's only one other answer in terms of what we expected from most guys and how they produced, and it's Tay Johnson. And that's
100%.
Yeah.
I think that there was an obvious kind of question mark of who the fourth secondary member would be, because you have Leonard Moore, Adon Schuler, and Christian Gray. Like, those were going to be your 3 kind of pillars. I'm not going to really count the nickelback in this spot. I'm just talking about the other safety position. There was Tay Johnson. There was, I'm just kind of thinking, Jalen Stroman, Ethan
I've got
Long.
Stroman in my stock down as well. He started the season as the safety, and obviously Tay Johnson just flew right past him and didn't relinquish. Now, Stroman played better later in the season when he wasn't sort of relied upon quite as much, but early in the season, there was no doubt that he struggled.
And who was the other guy that transferred out? There was another young safety that transferred out at the end of the season. He was going to be in consideration for that other safety.
Jadon Blair. Yeah.
Jadon Blair.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be honest here and call a spade a spade. Tay Johnson's rise basically forced out.
Precipitated that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I think that a year ago at this time, everyone would have said Jadon Blair's stock was pretty high for being the 5, like everything.
And that's what I was getting at, is I think that Tay Johnson stock rose so much that he did pass someone like Jadon Blair. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm pretty sure when we did the the drafting of the team or talking about guys who we thought would be, a boom player, I had Jadon Blair, and I thought he was going to be the guy to kind of be the other safety alongside of Don Schuler, and it ended up being Tay Johnson. And not only was it Tay Johnson, but Tay Johnson had interceptions. He had interceptions for touchdowns. He had pass breakups. I think the thing that steered me a little bit away from Tay Johnson is he had to miss the last couple games because of the injury.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that Boubacar Traore.
Oh, when he was playing, I mean, the guy had 4 interceptions. He led the team with the intercept. Actually, was he first or second? I think he was second on the team in interceptions, but he had 4 interceptions this year.
But what put Boubacar
Leonard Moore had more,
ahead of him in that, it's like a 1A, 1B for me. But Boubacar did lead the team in sacks, pressures, tackle for losses, and he played every game. And I think that is like, for me, that, and I know that, injuries happen and you can't really control those things, but I liked his full body of work playing, from game 1 to game 12.
I agree. And again, I'm not going to hold injury against Tay Johnson because when he was healthy, he's
electric
through the roof. Yeah, exactly. And we did the underrated stock. I went with Elijah Hughes as my underrated in terms like defensive tech. Cause again, we were talking about Bryce Young.
He stepped up in a really big situation.
Oh, exactly. He really came through when they needed him. You're going to have him back again this year. And when you look at the production, when you look at the numbers that Elijah Hughes and Bryce Young had, they're very similar. The difference is Hughes is obviously an interior defensive lineman, and he had 1 sack. I think that Bryce Young ended up with 2 sacks this season, so not far off there. And interior defensive line was an area of concern when you've got Rubio. Think about how long Rubio was out. They really needed him, and I felt like again as the season went on, he gave him a lot of quality time in the middle of that defensive line.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off that a little bit. I agree with Hughes, but I'm also going to throw Onyé into that boat as well as a guy whose stock
is on my list as well.
An underrated guy. And I know, he stepped away for personal reasons the season before. But you could argue leading up to that point, he'd really kind of his stock had flatlined or was kind of underselling a little bit. And I think finally we saw Onyé's stock go into the positive. And I think it was a little bit underrated because, again, him and Hughes stepped up in a really big situation against USC and held a USC team that is much better at running the ball at bay. And it forced them to have to throw the ball in a really rainy day. And I think that was, that really took a lot of the pressure off the defense, not the interior guys not allowing USC to get into easy 2nd and 6, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. They really forced them into some tough spots, and that takes pressure off your secondary at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I will say before we take another break and then come back and kind of wrap up this hour talking about some of the guys on the coaching staff, I didn't make a specific special teams category. I mean, just as a pure special teams guy, Jadarian Price through the roof when you return 2 kickoffs for touchdowns, especially when one of them was against your biggest rival, USC. But Matt Rendell's stock went up in comparison to his first year at Notre Dame, much more consistent punter. And as Vince and I talked about, and as Vince will keep reminding you, when they let him just punt, he did really well. He did that. Noah Burnett's stock unquestionably fell through the roof. And again, I've talked about how injuries don't affect. I feel like, just based on things that we've heard, Noah Burnett came to Notre Dame with an existing injury, and it got worse after he got here. So I'm not going to put him in that same category, because I don't think that he was completely upfront with his physical condition when he came here.
Yeah, another player that I'd like to add to the special teams list is Luke Talich. I think he's great in punt coverage. He's great in kickoff coverage. There's at least a handful of times where you just see him blow someone up, really blow someone up,
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, too, he was definitely a part of that fake punt against Stanford. I can't remember if he was I think he threw the ball
Al
to
Burnham threw the ball.
what was it completed to Talich? I think I couldn't remember if he was the guy who threw the ball, received
Now
the
you're
ball.
making me think. He had to have caught it, right?
Yeah, he caught it. I'm pretty sure Talich caught that fake punt and ran it all the way down the field. And a guy too who, provides a lot of good quality backup in the secondary. And so I know that's not technically special teams, but like it's kind of like the special teams role. You're a good backup and you make a lot of impactful plays on special teams.
Yeah, I was just looking it up to double check, and it's funny because I pulled up. Can you hear that? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I was looking up.
Did a video start
It was
playing?
Talich. It was Talich. Yeah.
We need our good friend Ty. He was Vince was saying last week that he was doing some like quality check for you guys in the background one of the shows when you were on the road, just like
Oh, really?
fact checking and like like if something like this would pop up, he'd be the one to like kind of and that's what we need. We need him in that role.
That's what you. Yeah, that's right. You need a good show producer. That's exactly right. It's tough to do both on the fly. All right, we haven't left a ton of time for the coaches. We can probably leak a little bit into the second hour, though, because I do want to talk about the coaching staff and whose stock went up and down the most. I felt like the coaching staff was a little bit tougher, maybe, but other people have much more critical views of the coaching staff. So we will talk about that. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, when you lose the two most important games and get left out of the playoffs by one spot,
See,
you're
but
gonna have
even that
some.
one I think is an interesting case because the stock definitely plummeted, but what kind of rally did it have? Like, how far up did it come over the course of the year? I don't know. I know that you think that it definitely rose, but I don't think necessarily everybody else agrees with you. We'll talk about the assistant coaches, though. Coming up next, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Winding down the first hour of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Along with Jesse Stiers, I'm Sean Stiers. We've been doing an end of season stock up, stock down on today's show. We've talked a lot about the players. Let's do some coaches before we wrap this up and get into some rapid fire in hour number 2. Today, Jesse, and Joe says, oh, Lord, the coaching staff is going to start a fight. Do you have who do you think is the most? Is Ash still the most divisive? Do you think, or is that just too easy to say? Overall, you've got to give him a stock down for the season based on what happened in the first, basically 2.5 games.
No, I'm not giving him a stock down. I do think that he is very decisive. I think that's the easy one. I think the one that's actually more decisive that really gets people fired up is Joe Rudolph.
I think that's true. And what's interesting about that,
I think there are more heated arguments about Joe Rudolph and the offensive line kind of configuration and who should be playing and where they should be playing rather than the defense as a whole.
I would agree with that for sure. But like when you look at Rudolph, granted you had 2 elite one very elite running back and another elite running back, Love and Price back there. But they ran the ball for over 200 yards a game. They averaged 5.7 per carry. And now, yes, you can attribute a lot of that to the running backs, but you do still have to have an offensive line in front of them. They also only allowed 12 sacks. I think with it's
not like CJ Carr is super mobile either.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Like there was a lot of concern coming into the season about you're going from Riley Leonard, who can bail you out of so many of those sacks because of the way he runs the football, to a more true pocket passer like CJ Carr. They only gave up 1 sack per game. That is a legit number.
Well, and I hate to be the guy because, a lot of people disapprove of my support of Joe Rudolph, but I hate to bang this drum continuously, but he did it with a lot of injuries too.
Yeah.
Like
for
throughout the season.
Year.
Correct.
Right. You still don't have Charles Jagasaw. You're arguably your best offensive lineman. You haven't had him 2 years in a row.
Right. And so the guy, in my opinion, continues to make lemonade out of lemons. Like there's really just no other way to put it. And, I hate the rhetoric, and that's a big word. You like that word, rhetoric?
I do.
That surrounds him or the offensive line that, oh, well, you got Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, 2 NFL running backs. Did you notice, though, in some of those runs, like the one against Pittsburgh, no one touched Jeremiah Love until he was at the safety level?
Right.
You think that just happens because the offensive line isn't blocking?
Against at that time, it was a top 10 rush defense as well. And I think they might have finished the season as a top 10 rush defense.
So some of those, holes and getting to the second and third level untouched, yes, that's because of really good running backs, but that's also because of really good blocking schemes.
I agree. I feel like there is, are there some things that the offensive line could do better? Yeah, they could move people off the line, a little bit better. Again, like the tackles could both be better run blockers, but they've got legit beef in the middle. They've had, as you said, they've both seasons now, they've dealt with significant injuries. Ashton Craig has been injured both seasons, and they ran the ball for over 200 yards a game, and they only allowed 12 sacks. Like that's fewer sacks than they allowed when Riley Leonard was the quarterback, by the way.
Which is a crazy stat when you think about it.
Yeah. Now, Joe is not alone in piling on Marty Biaggi. He says he was a kid. Joe beats this drum quite a bit. He was a kicker and couldn't develop one. Like they've gone to the
Joe inside of
portal.
Joe's
They've gone to the transfer portal every year. Like, so I don't understand the whole he can't develop a kicker. I mean, honestly, I understand where it comes from because there are other people who are far more harsh on Biaggi than me, but I just feel like with Biaggi, you're clinging to one thing. It was a significant issue, the kicking game. But again, you went to the transfer portal and brought in a kicker, and I don't think he disclosed the extent of an injury that he had when he came here, and it became a major issue. And they also turned, like Matt Rendell in a very short amount of time was an elite punter this year. Here are here are a couple things. Marty Biagi's special teams had the number 31 ranked FEI special teams in the nation. That is the overall combination of everything on your special teams. 2 years in a row, they had the number 31 special teams unit, like across the board. Their special teams were ranked number 31. That's with having the number 126 field goal efficiency unit this year. They still rank number 31. Second straight year. Number 31 out of 133 teams puts you in the top 25% of all special teams units in the nation. And you want to get rid of the guy because he's had some kicking issues.
So my biggest thing with Marty Biagi would be, yes, I think they excelled in literally every other special teams category except the kicking operation. I think that there's a little bit of a pass because it's not like the playoffs would have exploited that more, I think is what I'm getting at.
Oh,
because they would have needed a
come
kicker.
Back to haunt them at some because you're going to be playing more like competition, better competition.
Field goal type games.
Yes, exactly. Just like Penn State last year. The farther you went, the more a significant field goal was going to come into play. Like Vince and I talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
I think you get a pass.
Would have come back to bite them at some point.
Yes. But let's not forget that Marty Biagi is drawing a lot of interest from the NFL, and he's drawing a lot of interest from other top college programs. Like that doesn't happen for a guy whose stock is plummeting, I guess, at the end of the day. So
they have the number 7 combined punt kickoff and kickoff return efficiency in the nation, and the number 1 non-garbage time kickoff efficiency rating in the nation. Net special teams possession value generated point per attempt. That's part of
their field position was tremendous this year. Flipping field position.
It always is. It always is. But again, we're hyper focusing on one glaring issue. Does it need to be fixed? Yes. But across the board, the difference in special teams today compared to the special teams even 6 years ago is astronomically different. And people aren't nearly as mad at Mike Denbrock because of the fact that they had the red zone issues that they had this year as they are at Marty Biagi because of some kicking issues that they had.
Yeah, that's the funny part and I think Vince and I talked about that last week. I was like, Denbrock still never figured out the red zone or the short yardage situations. And I think that left more points out on the field than what this failed, kicking unit did at the end of the season, especially for a team that wants to go for it as much as Marcus Freeman does. So
yeah,
I'm not completely, sold, but sticking on, the coordinator side of things.
Whose stock rose the most of the assistant coaches? Whose stock rose the most? Let me ask you that, since we haven't really specifically gotten to that. Since this is stock up, stock down. I've got Gino Guidugli.
You have to.
If CJ Carr is the biggest stock up of the season, which I think that he is, then you've got to give it to the quarterback coach who developed him, who the guy came in with significant cachet and wisdom and everything beyond his years, but you've still got to have the right guy. There were questions about Gino Guidugli.
I mean, Notre Dame hasn't developed an in-house quarterback since when?
Exactly. Since Ian Book, basically.
You got to give a big nod to Gino. I mean, Rudolph, Denbrock, we all know who they were. I don't think anyone is going to say, Chauncey Stuckey, Mike Brown. Sorry, Chauncey Stuckey was the old wide receiver coach. Mike Brown. Defensive side of the ball. I mean, we all know about Mike.
No, nobody is going to say Stuckey.
Yeah. Defensive side of the ball. I mean, we all know about Mickens. He's gone to the NFL now. Al Washington got a promotion to the NFL. Max Bola got a promotion.
I think the defensive side of the ball, it's got to be either Washington or Max Bola whose stock rose the most, just because of maybe you didn't recognize it in the moment, but the fact that Al Washington is now going to go coach in the NFL. I think that his stock jumped up pretty significantly. But also when you look at things that Hughes and Dawson did and Onye And we saw some
Boubacar.
really significant development from some guys who had some pretty good question marks coming into the season. So I think Washington, and the fact that Bulla in a really short amount of time is able to go from position coach to coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to go watch just because there were serious questions about the defensive line going into the season. Those questions were answered, and he continued to recruit at a really high level. And I think you combine those things, his stock really rose. Max Bulla, I think he had a loaded hand. I think the linebacker room is just one of the best in the country. Did he elevate them? Yes. Is he now, becoming a defensive coordinator? Yes, but I don't know. I'm more impressed with Al Washington because I think he had to do more work to kind of overhaul that defensive line.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot more work that had to be done to get it to where it was. So anyone else? Are there?
I'm not going stock down on anyone.
I'm
on
not.
Any of the coaches.
That's what I'm trying to ask. Are there any stock down? And as I was saying it, the reason I was slow to say it is because I was trying to think in my head of.
I think you could say
I'm not down on Biaggi. Like, if you want to be down on Biaggi, be down on Biaggi. But again, if you look at the actual metrics of what the overall special teams was, not just one thing, if you look at the overall picture of Notre Dame's special teams, you can't put Biaggi in a stock down when your special teams 2 years in a row are in the top 25% of the entire FBS. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to echo a lot of that, what you were saying about Marty Biaggi, and transfer it over to Chris Ash. If you wanted to say he was stock down at the beginning of the season, sure. But I think his stock rose enough from that low point to say that maybe he's not stock up, he's not stock down. You can maybe be neutral on Chris Ash's stock. But they were a tremendous run defense the entire season. And when they got the secondary figured out, they ended up being one of the top 20 defenses in the country at the end of the day. So I know there are the struggles early on, but I give some leniency because of a guy who hadn't been in college in a while, was getting, now as a full-time defensive coordinator. That was never the case. He was co-defensive coordinator the last time he was in college, was dealing with some injuries early on in the secondary, not kind of coming fully to Tate Johnson as the guy as your other safety. Those things finally worked itself out through the season, and we saw that. And so if I see those hiccups early on to begin next season, then I'm done with Chris Ash because you can't make the same mistake twice. I need to continue to see your game elevate, but I'm
not after
I'm
you
not,
just missed the playoffs. You cannot have that in year two, and you've got a revamped defensive staff. A couple of guys who are going to be on this staff have worked with Ash in the past, so it is all on him now. There is zero room. There is zero margin for error in 2026 for Chris Ash. And really,
so I think what I'm ultimately saying is I'm reserving my final stock up, stock down on Chris Ash until next season ends. Okay. I think this season was a pretty neutral wash by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah. There was definitely improvement. And again, we've talked about, did he make those decisions on his own? Was he influenced? Of course he was influenced, but he still had to implement them every week. And they
still calling the game out there.
Yeah. They went from statistically one of the worst to a top 10 defense by the end of the season. And I still think it's underrated what they did against an Arkansas team that was putting 30 points on the board against all of the elite teams in the SEC, but they were just completely shot down by Chris Ash in game 4 after, look at what Notre Dame did in a half against Purdue, the way Purdue was putting up video game numbers on them. So, all right. We're going to have to wrap it up with that because we are behind going into hour number 2. We got a lot to come in rapid fire. That's on the way. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It's hour 2, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. And that means we are rolling into rapid fire time. Along with Jesse Stiers, John Stiers. We're a little bit behind because we went a little bit long with the first hour of the show tonight with some of our stock up, stock down. Jesse, I want to circle back to the big news of the day that we led off the show with. Jaden Ivey, a local Mishawaka Marion product, son of Notre Dame women's basketball coach Niele Ivey, as well as former Notre Dame football player Javen Hunter, traded today from the first place in the Eastern Conference, Detroit Pistons, to 9th place, Chicago. Obviously, like in terms of this area, he's much closer to home. Is this ultimately, scale of 1 to 10, how big of a good of a move is this for Jaden Ivey personally?
Yeah, I think that this could turn into something that's like an 8 out of 10 for Jaden Ivey. So I do think that he's going to get more minutes. I think he's obviously going to recover from that surgery, and now he's no longer behind Cade Cunningham, who is arguably the best point guard in the league. Averages basically a double-double in terms of points and assists per game. A guy who's making his All-Star appearance this season for the within the All-Star game. And so to me,
All-Star appearance within the All-Star game. Who knew?
It's an uphill battle. Cade Cunningham is young. He's proven to be one of the best guards in the league. And I think that this bodes well for Chicago as well, because again, they are a guard and forward heavy team, guard and forward heavy team. He's going to have the likes of Josh Giddey, Kobe White over in Chicago, but I think they see them more as a group, not necessarily, someone who's in the depth chart of 1 and 2 and that sort of thing. I think they play a lot of guards and a lot of forwards who average between 25 and 30 minutes a game.
So he might not jump into the starting lineup right away, but you expect him to be one of the first guys off the bench that, like more off the bench.
Yeah, I think you see a definite uptick in his minutes right away.
I would think so as well. Like, that's what I was going to ask you, is like who the main competition was and that kind of thing. It just feels like this is a move that's going to give him much more opportunity to play more. Hopefully that, that injury that he is able to continue to move past that after breaking his leg last year. But it feels like for him a really good opportunity and potentially something that could help Chicago out as they look to stay in the thick of a playoff spot here down the stretch the next couple of months.
I definitely agree. Like I also said that, the Bulls traded with Boston and got rid of their big man, brought in another guard of, I'm going to say his name wrong. I believe it's Anthony Simmons. So again, they're loading up on guards and forwards. It feels like a very deliberate thing. And I see Jaden Ivey as a guy who benefits from this.
All right. So we will keep our eye out for this. It's not long. No, it's not very often, rather, that that there's an NBA trade that impacts things locally. And with the trade deadline coming up Wednesday for the NBA, Jaden Ivey getting traded from Detroit to Chicago today. Fill in the blank. It's blank that FanDuel gives Notre Dame the best odds to win next year's national championship, and CJ Carr is the early favorite to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, this unfortunately is setting the expectation bar quite high. And we're only in February of 2026. First game isn't going to be until September. So we're 6-7 months away, and we've already got people like Josh Pate saying that, Notre Dame is his preseason number 1. And now you see, Notre Dame has the best odds to win the national championship. Their quarterback has the best odds to win the Heisman. Everyone talks about how favorable this schedule is going into, this season and how it should just be this easy 12-0 thing. And so I think that there is a lot of buildup for expectations, which is good and bad, because you can live up to them. You can do your thing. But then as soon as Notre Dame slips up, every national person is going to be on them 2 times harder, because they're like, well, I had Notre Dame going into the season as
I told you Notre Dame wasn't relevant.
Right.
Simmer down.
Right.
Dan.
And so you'll hear more of that as soon as one little thing goes wrong.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, it's cool that they've got this kind of preseason hype, I guess, already coming from Vegas. But at the end of the day, Indiana was the biggest long shot to ever win the championship, So I think I would rather be a longer shot than a favorite going into the season, because it just, how often does it actually work out for a favorite going into the season? Like, they've got a chip on their shoulder from the way things ended this year, which is good. So that'll drive them so far. I'd personally just rather have more external doubt on you to continue to kind of drive that, like I would rather find other ways, kind of like Michael Jordan, just find ways to manufacture chips on your shoulder. Like, when was the last time that a Heisman Trophy favorite going into a season actually ended up winning the Heisman Trophy? It's very hard, because when you start with that, people just look for every little thing to
You're
pick
judged at a different
find
scale.
reasons not to vote for you. Yeah, that's exactly right. The microscope is bigger. The expectations are higher when you're the favorite. Now, I do think it's interesting that Vegas likes the Irish, though, because, like, Notre Dame can get all the hate from other fan bases and the media and all that different kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the people who look at this stuff most objectively
are the books,
are the bookmakers in Vegas, because it's all about what drives the money one way or another. So, like, they stand to make or lose the most money. They actually like Notre Dame. So I do find that aspect of it from a team standpoint intriguing.
Let me ask you this question. Does this team feel like the Ohio State team that beat Notre Dame in the national championship? Because I think you could make the argument that Ohio State team had very lofty expectations going into the season. They were seen as the odds-on favorite to probably win the national championship. Obviously, there were a couple stumbles along the way that got people kind of, scratching their head a little bit. But, ultimately they prevailed and lived up to their potential and won a national championship. And it feels like to me that it's similar, that the pieces are coming together for Notre Dame. Like, if you look at Ohio State, before that season started, they got a really big key piece in Caleb Downs transferring and being a part of the secondary. They got Quinshon Judkins to back up Travion Henderson, the Ole Miss running back. And so now you had two NFL running backs. You obviously had, Will Howard. He transferred in. I think that, there were mixed emotions about him, but when you stack them up with NFL wide receivers, you give them NFL running backs. And then, on the defensive side of the ball, a lot of their homegrown guys were coming into their senior year, their fifth year, and again, they added Caleb Downs in the secondary. I don't know. And also, the coordinator situation kind of fully came together. You had Chip Kelly. I think Mike Denbrock is largely equivalent to Chip Kelly as being a top guy in the offensive realm of college football. Defensive side of the ball, I can't remember the guy's name, but he ended up leaving and going to Penn State to be their defensive coordinator. But again, that came together. It just feels like to me with Jim Knowles, with CJ Carr, with what they did in the transfer portal, with where their roster is at, where the recruiting is at, they're potentially convincing a guy to become, to from a defensive coordinator position to come in and be your defensive back coach. And obviously the rumors about co-defensive coordinator. The fact that you're selling coaches like that, you're selling players like that, it feels like that Ohio State team, to me at least.
I think there's some of it there. I can buy your argument, counselor. I think there's some of it. I think the biggest difference is maybe the skill positions in comparison. Like, if you had either Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price back on this team, with that true explosiveness that, I mean, we all think that Aeneas Williams is going to be good, and there's some good depth there, but it's a little bit different there. And you also don't have a Jeremiah Smith, a definite guy at wide receiver, even though he was obviously a true freshman. But yeah, I think that there's some similarities. I will say that, and especially with the fact that you've got a proven quarterback.
So what you're basically saying is you trust the defense. The defense is what it is. You obviously trust
For the
CJ
most
Carr.
part, but I do have, if I have concerns, it's probably more on the defensive side of the ball just because you've got complete turnover with the coaching staff there. So there are going to be some question marks on the defensive side because you've got an all-new staff with the exception of Chris Ash, and we all had questions about Chris Ash to begin with.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident on the defensive side of the ball, regardless of who's the coordinators or this and that. I think there's enough talent and enough experience that'll take care of it. So to me, what will separate Notre Dame and really distinguish themselves as a dominant team is what you get out of the running back and the wide receiver room.
Yeah,
because I think that's where they've been lacking that standout wide receiver. And then do you have enough with Aeneas Williams and company to not feel the loss of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price quite hard?
Mike in the YouTube chat says he agrees. Texas, Penn State, Clemson. Look how they fared last year in terms of expectations going into the season. And Brent says the expectations are way too high, too early. And these are kind of, my points. And David Mazzaro says the betting markets in February don't mean squat. Media fodder, something to talk about, I guess. Well, but again, Vegas is also trying to make as much money as they can right now, one way or the other. Irish Chi-Town says Josh Pate says that he loves Notre Dame until he finds a reason to throw him under the bus. I just really, I thought I've felt like Pate, for the most part, was a pretty level-headed person. He can be. I just really felt like he flip-flopped a lot. Talked out of both sides of his mouth with Notre Dame this year, though. Don't you?
Yeah, I mean, he just wants to cover his tracks. He wants to be the guy who's a classic Notre Dame hater for no reason. But then as soon as Notre Dame gets good, he's like, "Oh, I told you so." And it's like, no,
right.
You that's not the same boat that you were on at the beginning of the season.
Not what you were saying. That's right. Doesn't matter how eloquently you try to put it. Exactly.
He's the type of guy that always gives himself like a security blanket,
Yeah, nice.
So he can always be right technically at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I don't think that take the fact that it's ESPN out of the equation, just the fact that he's on ESPN more and he's getting more exposure there. I don't think that helps either because just gives you a bigger megahorn,
Yeah, I mean, the group from ESPN that took 2 weeks out of their schedule to bash Notre Dame and make sure that narrative was pushed.
Oh, them. Yes. Okay, so this is Riley Leonard on the Jordan Take Two podcast with Jordan Travis and Devin Travis talking about Notre Dame head coach Marcus Freeman. Here's Riley Leonard.
About Freeman, if he didn't have an opinion on something, he's not going to go out of his way to power trip and make you do something. So if we wanted to wear suits to the games, he did not care. He just said, do it as a team. Whatever the jerseys we wanted to wear each week, he could care less. Whatever the captains want, just pick it. And in college football and coaches in general, that's so rare. I mean, a lot of times I think it's so cool for the players to make decisions and the coach to be like, dude, I got so much confidence in myself and this culture that whoever I let make a decision, I'm going to have crafted them and their decision making to be so good that I trust it. He's the man.
So what do you think about that kind of mentality from the head football coach? And who are the coaches do you think are the least likely to have that same kind of approach?
Yeah, what I think that what this says about kind of Marcus Freeman's mentality is there's bigger picture things that he's more so worried about, right? Like probably the X's and O's and
the color of the jersey is the last thing on his mind.
Yeah, the overall game plan. And, I hate kind of drawing, comparisons to Brian Kelly, but I guarantee you Brian Kelly probably got more mad about, what jerseys they'd be wearing and whether or not, people are wearing the right thing on the team plane and the team bus than actually worried about game plan and X's and O's and the things that are actually game-changing, coaching points that you can control as a head coach. And I think also what this installs is you're teaching leaders and you're teaching the team to be confident in their own decisions.
You're letting them make decisions.
That's right. You're making them feel like they have a say. They ultimately have, it's not just a straight up dictatorship at the end of the day. Like if the players present something and they all mutually agree to it, like not playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl, he's going to allow them to be the face of that decision and say, we came together as a collective group, and this is what we want to do.
Right, because like we've heard that not necessarily everyone on the team was fully in line with opting out of the bowl. There were some guys who were more on the fence. There were some guys who did want to play. There were other guys who were perfectly fine not playing in the game. But not every decision that a leader makes is going to be fully embraced by everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like that's part of, again, empowering them and giving them the ability to make decisions. Not everyone might agree with it, but you've got to make a decision. That's part of being a leader, no matter what. And I think that it's great that he empowers the team that, the way that he does. And I think that a big part of that is why, like when you hear a guy like Riley Leonard speaking like that, and when you see and hear the players on this team, why they appear to be so fully invested and bought into the things that are going on in Marcus Freeman's program.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's take a timeout. When we come back, we've got more rapid fire on the way. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues rapid fire in the 6 o'clock hour of the show. Jesse just kicking back, chilling, catching up on a few texts as he enjoys the break there.
The one time I forgot to turn my video off on break.
Mm-hmm. Tattoo in the YouTube chat says Naomi doesn't even let Jesse pick a restaurant. Ouch. Man, is this true?
Not true.
People
Completely.
are talking. People are saying.
A lot of the conversation, it's so funny because whenever we're picking for dinner, it's always like, oh, where do you want to go? And I'm like, I'm the person who could eat whatever. Like, we could go to a place and I'm like, I'll find something to eat. Usually it's Naomi who's like, oh, I'm not in the mood for, a greasy burger, or I really want a salad. I'm like, okay, so if you know that you are in the mood for something particular, then you pick and I'll find something. And usually it goes, well, why don't you just pick something? And so I'm the one who actually has to pick most of the time where we're going to eat.
Okay, there you go. Good explanation. Brent in the YouTube chat asks how we feel about the Cowboys having a chance at drafting Jeremiah Love. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to last that far. I mean, I realize they're mock drafts and everything, but the Saints and the Chiefs are both in the market. They both pick ahead of the Cowboys, and there's no way Jerry Jones is trading up to draft a running back as good as Jeremiah Love is. They have too many defensive holes to fill.
So, let's just say, because I'll play along with the hypothetical. Say Jeremiah Love is there. They got two first-round picks. It would really put my heart in a tough situation because I would love to see Jeremiah Love be a Cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to use every single draft pick on defensive players, especially in the first round where the talent is so high end and you can get guys who can be impactful right away.
But would they be in a situation like when they drafted CeeDee Lamb that came completely out of nowhere? No one was talking about CeeDee Lamb.
I mean, it would complete their offense. There's no question.
He was too good to pass up. That's why they drafted him. They just flat out went best player on the board and they got CeeDee Lamb. And I think
and that's what I mean. It would be really hard to turn down Jeremiah Love when he's the best. You could argue he's the best offensive player in the draft. He's the best running back in the draft. And again, he would complete that offense. You'd have Dak, you'd have George, you'd have CD, you'd have Jeremiah Love, you'd have Jake Ferguson. It would be the most complete offense in the entire NFL.
Correct. But I don't think it's going to happen.
Unfortunately.
No, Brent. No to Kyle Shanahan in that offense. Please.
That's the last thing
They made the playoffs. They're way too far down. Like that. I don't see that happening. So every few months, Kevin Wildes from Fox Sports goes on the Bill Simmons podcast and they do something called Half-Baked Ideas. Have you ever listened to the Half-Baked Ideas segment?
I think I've caught a couple of them.
Okay. Here is a half-baked idea they recently talked about that they actually got submitted by a listener. Here you go.
Adams, NBA Royal Rumble. It's either one-on-one or knockout, but not just current players. Bring out retired guys, college players, whatever you want. The fans have no clue who comes out next. 30 names, a King of the Hill survivor, but stealing the idea of the Royal Rumble where dudes just sprint out of the tunnel. There's a belt and everything. Tell me that's not the best all-star Saturday event. That's a free half-baked idea. Thumbs up. Crushed it.
Two guys come out. It's Anthony Edwards and Zion. Anthony Edwards wins. He's king of the court. Now Con Knipple runs out. And he's got to score 2 baskets before. But if Edwards scores 1 basket, he stays on. Con Knipple has to leave. He's got to score 2 times in a row on him.
Then guess who comes out next? Hakeem Olajuwon.
Yes. Yes. Oh, my God. It's Angel Reese's music. What is she doing here? She's number 5. My God.
Is that Christian Laettner?
Christian Laettner.
That's a pretty good one.
Like, oh, no. And the music is so good.
Yes.
Oh, you just hear the Bulls music? What's going on?
Steve Kerr?
Steve Kerr, I thought we were getting Jordan.
And then number 30 is LeBron,
good.
and everyone gets mad that they rigged it. Of course he's number 30. Of course they just wanted LeBron to win. And then we talk conspiracies. This all sounds great.
Okay, so first, I had never heard of Kevin Wildes before. He started, I'd hear him do the half-baked thing on the Simmons podcast. He's on that Nick Wright show, which I basically never watch. I did see some of it when I was in California because the first hotel we were at didn't have NFL Network, and I needed something besides Sports Center time after, like throughout the day. Kevin Wildes has the perfect voice to do a segment called Half Baked Ideas because he's just got one. It's like
he's a little bit of a quirky guy.
3-minute abs. It's like he's going to sell you this crazy, wacky idea. What do you think about this idea that, this knockout Royal Rumble thing that, like they're pitching it for the All-Star game? I feel like this could work in a lot of other sports for similar things where you just bring, like you can have current players, you bring back former players, and you kind of do this knockout contest in front of an arena full of fans. What do you think about this?
Yeah, I first of all, I love the idea, and I think it could translate across sports. I think you could do like one-on-ones with wide receivers and corners, and you're bringing out new, old and current wide receivers, corners. Baseball, you could just do, get rid of the defense, just have pitcher hitter matchups, and you bring out,
Here comes
old timers.
Here comes Derek Jeter. Yeah.
I think I was waiting for this to say, here comes Shaquille O'Neal out of the tunnel, because I feel like he could still hold his own in some basketball. But what this piggybacks off of, and I don't know how much you know about, the Olympic practices, but they do this in Olympic basketball, especially in the USA training camp. They do a lot of one-on-ones, king of the hill, basically, where
bring a guy in.
Yeah, and it's just next guy on. You're rotating. You're just playing one-on-one basketball. If the offense scores, you stay on. If the defense, loses, next guy comes in.
We used to do a takedown thing like that at wrestling practice, where you start off with the first two guys, you take the other guy down, you stay on, the next guy on, and you just, like you see who could keep going and get the most takedowns over the, in the course of the thing.
I think that we've gotten away. I especially in the NBA level, and the NFL, like we've gotten away from it being a true, all-star game, best on best, guys who are taking it seriously the entire time. And so it's like, how can you keep that competitive spirit, keep the players intrigued, keep the fans intrigued? And I think something like this is good because it's one after the next. You're seeing them in such short bursts that you are locked in as a fan because you're like, well, who's going to come out next? You have no idea.
Yeah. See, like in the the Pro Bowl games that they do these flag football games. It feels like you could do something like this, like the practice, like during training camp and stuff. You'll have live cornerback versus wide receiver, so like you just keep running rep after rep. If the wide receiver keeps winning, then you just keep bringing a new DB on to go up head to head with him. If the DB keeps winning, you bring new receivers on to go head to head. It's just like you run them on, and it's, again, like you got the music and the whole thing. And I think college basketball, you could do something like that. It's some of the stuff that they do. Like that would be a very unique spin. Like you could do something like that as a precursor to the Final Four, where you've got some current players who aren't playing in the Final Four, and you bring back some greats. And especially like with NIL, you could literally make it worth people's money to do something like this, where you're just running guys and women on the court for the little one-on-one stuff.
I'd love to see Caitlin Clark come out and play against some of these NBA guards and just see if she could get some shots off. And you know what I mean? Like I would, like they talked about Angel Reese, like give me Caitlin Clark running out of the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. I think it'd be a lot of fun. A very, very unique idea. And I like the segment was half-baked ideas. And again, that came from a listener. I felt like it was a very full-baked idea that the listener gave to him there. So
something they really thought out.
Yeah, exactly. So SI's Jimmy Traina says Kyle Brandt from NFL Network, who also dabbles on CBS from time to time, should take Matt Ryan's place on CBS's NFL Today pregame show, since Matt Ryan has gone off to join the Atlanta Falcons as an executive. So Traina says Kyle Brandt over possible options like Mike Tomlin or Aaron Rodgers, assuming Aaron Rodgers retires. Do you buy or sell Kyle Brandt to CBS's NFL Today?
This is a big buy for me, and maybe that's a little bit of surprise for you. I've been notorious. I think before we get too deep into this, I think Kyle Brandt's stance on the Cowboys is very similar to how Josh Pate plays with Notre Dame.
I don't think you're wrong, but I think
I think he loves to rub it in the Cowboys' face, and I think he also loves to be the guy.
So polarizing teams. It's just low hanging fruit for both of them to make whichever point they want to make.
Correct, but I think that Kyle Brandt would be better than rigid, conspiracy theory Aaron Rodgers. I think Mike Tomlin, yes, he has a lot of knowledge, but I don't know how personable and how good he would be, on TV. But what makes Kyle Brandt so intriguing is he's the perfect combination of knowledge. Like, the guy knows a ton about football, ton of a lot of football knowledge. But
he actually played at Princeton, and he was also, but yeah. So I mean, he's got a college football background.
Knows a ton about football. Loves the game of football.
Actually grew up a Notre Dame fan too, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. His dad is actually a Notre Dame alum, grew up in the Chicago suburbs.
I did not know that.
Yeah. But
what puts him over the top is he's a really good entertainer, storyteller, and the way he presents his football knowledge, it's not intrusive. It's not like I told you so. Or he's it's not like Louis Riddick and Dan Orlovsky trying to one-up each other and continuously flex how much they know about football. He's a guy who makes football really easy to follow. And it's not like he's insulting you along the way or making you feel bad about, your lack of knowledge, I guess you could say at the end of the day.
No, exactly. And I think that for a show like this, the CBS show specifically, Fox is getting a little bit longer in the tooth, even though they've tried to mix some younger guys, but like Brandt already does some stuff for CBS. He does some of those prepackaged, little sketches that they work into that CBS NFL Today show, like where they mix some humor and pop culture. And that's a big thing, is like he's on Good Morning Football, so he's on every day. He's got an extended format. And so he's got the great football knowledge, but he also has the perfect balance of both football knowledge and the entertainment value with the pop culture, references that are sprinkled in, like the guy's wearing, like Rocky t-shirts. And, he actually, you remember that Whose Car Are We Gonna Take? T-shirt? Like, I bought that. I'll say that I had it before him, but he was wearing a Whose Car Are We Gonna Take t-shirt last week on Good Morning Football, so he's on point on that. Like, he and Schrager used to do Peter Schrager used to do Good Morning Football together. Schrager's on ESPN now, but the CBS pregame show is just in need of an infusion of some more youth and just general, like, lighten the mood a little bit. And I think Kyle Brandt would be the perfect mix of that, because again, of the mix of the football knowledge, the pop culture, and he gets the entertainment value that is part of TV. And I think that, like Lee Corso used to talk about it all the time, it's entertainment, sweetheart. And I think that is missing specifically from that CBS pregame show. It's been missing probably going back to when you had Musburger and Jimmy the Greek together.
Yeah, I think it's been missing not only on that CBS show. I think Fox does better at, and I think that's why I like the NFL Network so much, is they do so many like creative kind of skits or segments, kind of whatever you want to call it, that makes it more than just like a football dump for 3-4 hours straight in these pregame shows. But most importantly, and I've told you this throughout the entire season, whether it's been college or NFL, these broadcast booths have been so bad about the entertainment side of things that, like, I've had a record-setting amount of mutes this season. Like, I muted so many games because I was just so done with feeling like they're just dumping all this on you and they want you to feel how they feel. Like, it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't make me have to pick a side or feel like I need to pick something. You need to present it to me, make it a not even solely entertaining, but there needs to be more fun to it. And at the end of the day, I should decide what I want to decide. I shouldn't have Kirk Herbstreit telling me that this is how it is, or Al Michaels, grumpy Al Michaels telling me that this game stinks and
so
this and that. And
you're segueing you're segueing into where we were going next, because I do feel like Brant is the perfect mix of all these things, but he can't be on everything. He does a great job on Good Morning Football. As someone mentioned, the ESPN NFL Network acquisition has been approved by the federal government, so that is going through. So we're going to really curious to see what that means for the programming on both, and kind of how they go forward. But Vince and I talked yesterday about the combination of entertainment and education that you get from the broadcast and what you want. And I agree, like Vince said, the first thing has to be education. I actually think that the bigger priority to me is the entertainment value with the education aspect sprinkled in. Like Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick can sit there and lecture you the whole broadcast. But, to your point about mute, did you have any fun watching a Dan Orlovsky, Louis Riddick NFL broadcast? No, there's zero entertainment value to it. So I think that, to make it as compelling as possible, yes, you need guys who know their stuff, but it needs to be presented in an entertaining fashion. So, John Madden was the perfect mix of all this. And I realize he was probably, way too much before your time, but, he's the standard for all these different analysts. Okay, just go ahead and do that while we're on the air.
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
No, you weren't. See, this is entertainment. This is entertainment value right here. Jesse screaming at his dog. But John Madden, for all the booms and doinks and slobber knockers and, using the telestrator to show you an NFL lineman's, snot dripping off his face mask. Like, John Madden was the ultimate, he won a Super Bowl as a head coach, and he presented information in an entertaining fashion. Like, he literally wrote a book called 1 Knee Equals 2 Feet. What's that mean? 1 knee down inbounds for a receiver is the same as having 2 feet down as a receiver. This is the guy that I and so many millions more grew up watching, and he educated us in a very entertaining fashion and probably helped it stick more in our brains because it doesn't just become boring background noise. That's that we need more of that. There's just not a whole lot of that. In the time that we have left, you've got the Buck Aikman booth, the Tirico Collinsworth booth, Nance and Romo, Burkhardt and Brady, Al Michaels, Herb Street. Those are the number one booths. Which of these booths do you think does the best job of mixing the entertainment and the education?
Yeah, I want to get something real quick, and I'll answer your question. You asked, what's more important, the education or the entertainment? I think the average viewer is watching football because they know football, and so entertainment has to be the lead. There's not many casual people just tuning in to watch a random football game.
There are still different things that an analyst needs to explain, but it needs to be done in a way that everyone can understand, to a broad audience.
Yes. This past season, talking about what booths give the best entertainment and education, I really think Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth. I got a little bit annoyed with Collinsworth to end the season. I like Romo, but I think Jim Nance doesn't play off him very well. I honestly really like the Iron Eagle and J.J. Watt booth as well. I think a booth that can have knows how to have entertainment, but also presents the football side of things really well.
Oh, sorry. I just felt like I needed to yell at some point.
And then, too, I really enjoyed Joe Davis and Greg Olsen. I've come a long way on Greg Olsen.
Really? I find Joe Davis to be pretty boring myself, especially in baseball, so it's a little bit different. But I feel like Joe Davis, he just goes along and he's pretty blah, and then a big highlight comes and he just goes through the roof. It's one extreme to another.
I'm definitely not picking Burkhardt and Brady. Definitely not picking Al Michaels and Herb Street. Joe Buck and Aikman are up there for me, but I don't know. I really haven't enjoyed Joe Buck as much recently as well.
And part of the problem, I still think that they are the number one team, and I think they have the best chemistry, and that's part of the deal. Aikman is more critical than probably any of the other analysts, but he also does it in a very fair way. But Buck just has such a relaxed delivery. And again, they play off each other. Buck is fairly effortless. But Aikman also knows how to laugh, and I think when you look at some of these other analysts now, Collinsworth knows how to laugh. Here's the biggest issue. I realize there's a huge love affair with a lot of Notre Dame fans with Tirico, and I do think that he's really good. I think that sometimes he just talks too much. If I have an honest critique of Mike Tirico, like I feel like sometimes he's trying to prove to us that he knows everything about everyone, and it's like you can let that broadcast breathe a little bit more. That'd be my biggest critique, and the biggest critique of Collinsworth is he used to be more critical. And now he's just, this guy is just great, Mike. I love this guy. It's like not everybody can be like that. That's my biggest issue with that booth.
I would agree. And I don't think we have much more time to go too much more in depth here.
We can go a little bit farther if you want to. I can buy us a couple minutes. So if you have more to add.
Yeah, I mean, I largely agree with what I'm kind of that person. Like, I love the way that Mike Tirico tells a story. And I do agree that he can be a little bit long-winded, and Chris Collinsworth has kind of become slap happy over the last couple years. But, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman are always going to be up there as well, like you talked about. I don't know. I've seen something with Joe Buck recently where I don't know how to explain it. I can't quite put my finger on it. He's just been a little bit. I think he's trying to save himself from embarrassment almost, it feels like. Like he says things in a way where it's like it can't come back to bite him almost. I don't know.
Maybe that's more politically correct than if you go back to the Randy Moss, most disgusting fake moon,
yes
thing.
Yeah. Yes, I think he's trying to play a little bit more closer to the fence, a little bit more balanced.
I can maybe see that.
The way to put it.
See, the Brady Burkhardt. Brady is better. Yes. He's more relaxed. He's not, forcing, he had information overload in his first season, and he's figured some things out, and he's better. But I do still think that he's fairly vanilla most of the time, and it's just not an entertaining, broadcast to listen to, especially in comparison to the other ones.
There's just not straight flow to it. Yeah. It feels like there's a lot of hiccups.
Look, I talked about this with Vince yesterday, and Chi-Town says he likes Brad Nessler. Well, one, he doesn't do NFL, and two, he's probably not that far from retirement at this point. But what was I going to say? I feel like if you put, I think you and I have talked about this. If you put Romo and Ian Eagle together, I think you'd probably have the best booth of any NFL booth. I think.
Yeah, if we want to play that game, I would definitely go Ian Eagle and Tony Romo, or maybe Mike Tirico and Troy Aikman.
Ooh, I think that could be really good. But you obviously aren't as high on Joe Buck, so
right
as well.
If you ask Cleveland people, they really hate Joe Buck.
Yep. All right. Well, I'm officially at the point where I've got to wrap this up. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.
Adios.